A word from our sponsors. AdQuick seamlessly connects advertisers to out-of-home media owners anywhere in the U.S. and abroad, and makes it easier than ever to plan, buy, and measure every kind of outdoor advertising, from static billboards to hand-painted murals. If you run online ads, you're used to the speed of deployment and accountability provided via analytics. AdQuick provides the same experience digital marketers are used to in the OOH space. With AdQuick, advertisers gain immediate access to over 1,600 premium out-of-home media owners, can execute OOH buys 10 times faster, launch OOH campaigns in as little as 48 hours, and unlock unprecedented measurability. To learn more, go to adquick.com. Again, that's adquick.com. This is a disclosure. Please note that all guests featured on the AdTechGod pod are invited to participate. They do not pay in any form to appear on the show. However, guests may be sponsors of the AdTechGod community, the AdTech Forum, or other product offerings. Welcome to the AdTechGod pod, your window into the world of advertising technology and the people behind it. I'm your host, AdTechGod. Welcome back to another episode of the AdTechGod pod, the podcast where we bring you inspiring stories and insights from leaders across the advertising industry. Katie McAdams is the Chief Marketing Officer at Basis, where she has been a driving force for the past 5.5 years. Her journey to this role is marked by an impressive tenure at Centro, spanning nearly 14 years. While at Centro, Katie held multiple key positions, including SVP of Publisher Development and EVP of Customer Experience, showcasing her versatile expertise and dedication to the industry. But Katie's impact goes far beyond her professional achievements. She is deeply passionate about giving back to the community and making a difference in the lives of others. Katie served on the board of Allen Robinson Within Reach Foundation and is actively serving on the Wesley Child Care Board, Patrick Williams Foundation as well. Her commitment to helping others is inspiring and a testament to her character. In this episode, we'll dive into Katie's career, her insights on leadership and marketing, and her heartfelt dedication to philanthropy. Katie, welcome to the AdTechGod pod.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here, and congratulations to you on the recent Marketecture acquisition and what you've managed to turn what you called this hobby of yours into. It's pretty tremendous. So congrats.
Thank you. It's been fun. It's super thankful for, honestly, everybody who's been supportive and kind of believed in what I was trying to do and just supported me all the way through the process. So thank you for saying that, Katie. Katie, I start the podcast the same way. I usually like to get an understanding of your background and what brought you to this point. How did you become a CMO at Basis, and what brought you to this point?
Sure. So I think, like a lot of us who work in ad tech, we didn't go to college thinking that when we graduate, we want to go find a job in this industry, and, didn't really maybe even know that this industry existed. So I kind of fall into that camp. When I graduated college, so I was a liberal arts major, and I was focused on English Lit and Spanish. And I really had a passion about journalism at the time. I did internships working in publishing throughout college, and I thought I was going to become a writer post-college. So my first job, I went and worked on the publishing side for the Cincinnati Enquirer. And I pretty quickly realized that, sludging it out as a journalist probably wasn't what I wanted to do. And so I ended up on the advertising side of the business at the newspaper and sold print ads. This was, kind of still, I would say, more in the heyday of the newspaper industry. And I decided to move to Chicago, and I had a really good friend of mine who was working for an agency holding company in Chicago and said to me, there's this guy, Sean, who is starting this company, and it seems like he might be onto something. Do you want me to introduce you? So, of course, I said yes. I met with Sean Riegsecker, who's still our CEO. And my first interview with him lasted, I believe, about 6 hours. I was living in Wisconsin at the time. I had moved back. I missed, I think, 3 different trains back to Milwaukee. And finally, I think at like 7:00 at night, I said, listen, I gotta go. I gotta get out of here. But I was really struck by, after meeting him, he is an entrepreneur through and through. And the things that he was looking to do and accomplish were really big, huge things. And he was also really passionate about, guarding the fourth estate and finding ways to keep ad dollars with publishers to continue funding great journalism. And as someone who came from a newspaper, I really believed in that as well. So, a couple months went by. I was interviewing for other jobs in Chicago. And then I got the phone call from him and he said, "Hey, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I'm about to take another job with a consulting firm in Chicago." And he said, "No, you're not. You're going to come work for me." So, I took the job and I actually took my dad's advice because at the time it was a little bit scary to take this role. There were only 3 people in the company and we were working off of IKEA tables in a windowless room. It was certainly not glamorous. I even had to ask, "Do you guys have health insurance?" But my dad gave me the best advice. My dad's an entrepreneur and he said, "You're young. If you have the opportunity to go work for a startup, take it because you are going to learn so much more, so much faster than you will working for a big organization." So I took the opportunity and went and started with Centro. And now, here I still am because Centro is now Basis and have been with the company for almost 2 decades. So almost my entire career. And it has been tremendously rewarding, tremendously challenging, but the company is nothing like what it was when I started. So I think it's unique in our space when what I see typically folks are bouncing around every, 3 to 5 years to different companies. I think it's unique to see someone who is staying at a company this long, but I never would have stayed this long if it was still the same company that it was when I started at almost 20 years ago, because we have evolved the organization and managed to change with the industry. And I think in some ways have been staying ahead of the industry so that we can continue to grow and really be, influential in the space. So here I am almost 2 decades later and absolutely still loving it.
A few of my guests have spent, long periods of times at their employer. Jared Wilichinsky is one of them. He started off kind of like at a sports network and that was acquired and then turned into Paramount today, right? So he runs, I think, global ops for Paramount and a few others who are like, "Oh, I'm on year 13 and year 14. From your experience, how has it been going from 3 people to, how many people are Basis today?
We're close to 1,000 employees globally now.
How is that different, I guess, seeing the growth of really your baby going from kind of this, infant level to a grown up and multiple teams and operations and resources that you didn't have your first, few years ago?
Sure. I would say it's been a mixture of, there's a lot of joy involved in the process of seeing it grow. And then there honestly, and I don't think people really talk about this, who have been at a startup and seen it grow into something of the size that Basis now is. But there's a little bit of mourning that comes with it because you're kind of mourning the loss of some of the ways that the company operated when it was a lot smaller and, working in a 5-person organization and then making the leap. I think I would say our next big leap, we grew pretty tremendously over the course of around a year to almost 100 people. And then moving into different acquisitions, we acquired Site Scout, it was a DSP out of Toronto, and folding that organization into the larger company of Centro. It was challenging, eye-opening, and also rewarding in a lot of ways. But with each of those growth stages, you kind of have to let go of some of the ways that the company used to be. Like, you don't know everyone's name anymore. That was a big thing for me when I remember going to our annual sales conference and all of a sudden looking around and asking myself, who are some of these people? I don't actually know everybody anymore. And there's something about just growing up. I think a lot of us, when we started at the company, we were in our 20s, we were in our early 30s. Our lifestyle, our priorities were at a different place in our life. So I think it's not only about going through the different growth stages of the company. And we've certainly had, obviously going from 3 to almost 1,000 employees and expanding globally and going through multiple acquisitions, multiple product launches. We've had big leaps as a company that we've had to mature through. And I'm really proud of the way that we, have done that at each stage. But I think it's interesting because it also mirrors a lot of the personal journeys that those of us who've been there since the beginning, because there's a good contingency of us who've been at the company for more than 15 years. I think it's a testament to the culture at the company. We continue to win a lot of best places to work awards, and there's a reason people stay so long. But those of us who've been there for almost, for 15, 17 years, when we started, we were babies. The company was a baby and we were too. We were 24, 25 years old. So I think going from being, a single 25-year-old living in the city in the middle of this ad tech industry and all of the fun, that comes with that, you had to grow up not only as a company, but as individuals. And we've all kind of been on that journey together, which has been pretty rewarding. And I think it's allowed me a lot of tremendous relationships that I have with some of my colleagues that I know I will carry through me for the rest of my life, whether I'm at Basis or somewhere else.
What do you think is the reason why people have stuck around for so long? Because you're right. I think the average tenure at, let's say, some major companies are like 24 months. Some are like, oh, you've been there 5 years. You're furniture at this point. Time to jump. You need to make a decision. I remember someone telling me, you need to make a decision. Are you going to be there forever? Or is it time for you to move? I'm like, I've only been here 5 years.
Right.
It didn't feel that long, but I guess you're right. And why do you think people stick around and stay working with you and the team at Basis?
I think it's a good question because certainly people can leave. They can go make more money, somewhere else probably. And sometimes it's really appealing also to take a look at the other companies and recruiters that approach you, because there usually is more money or more equity or something that's enticing in leaving. But we actually have what we call boomerangs at our organization who have left and then come back. There's a couple of people who've left and come back not once, but twice. So they're a double boomerang. And what they do is they come back and, they say the grass was not greener. And I think at our company, there is passion and commitment to what we're working on, which I think is a huge vision. We're not working on a point solution. We're working on something that's pretty massive and I think could be transformational for our clients, for the industry. And so I think people get excited and energized about that, about the vision. And while the company's evolved, if I look at kind of our core mission from the beginning, which was to really improve the lives of people working in digital advertising, we haven't really strayed from that. So how we do that has changed and evolved, but that core mission and core vision has remained. And then I also think that the way that we operate the company is we always err on the side of giving employees more information versus less. So there's a level of transparency into what we're doing, how the company's performing, what the senior leadership and executive team, feel about certain things that we will share openly with the organization. So I think being connected to the information and understanding what's really going on with the business, how leadership feels about things, leadership being willing to call. I heard Rashad Tabakawala at an event we had recently, call the thing in the middle of the table a turd if it's a turd versus sugarcoating things. So I think there's been just a level of directness and transparency that we've operated the company with, combined with the fact that we have a really big, lofty mission. I think those are some of the things that keep people at the company. But I also will say not everyone has made it along on the journey, right? I think if people aren't willing to or aren't able to really change with the company and grow themselves personally and invest in their own personal growth, then oftentimes they find that it's no longer the right fit for them at Basis, because we're really committed on personal development and personal growth as part of our overall culture.
What do you think in terms of the industry and the direction it's heading in, over the next, 12, 18 months for obviously some of your employees as we look at regulation, buying standards, inventory quality, et cetera? Like, where do you think things are heading in the next 12 to 18 months in the industry? And how do you think Basis will deal with those changes and kind of adjust?
So for us, what's interesting is we believe that some of the biggest problems in the industry are some of the things that people aren't talking about. They're not necessarily sexy. They're not the things that are being, written about every day. And when we think about some of the problems, the biggest problems that we believe that ad agencies, which is primarily who we're building our software for, are actually facing, we believe that those problems haven't been addressed. We talk a lot about how do we prepare for the cookieless future? How do we improve attribution? How do we target more effectively? How do we merge our linear and our CTV strategies? But if you talk to an agency CEO and ask them what their biggest challenges are, it's probably not going to be one of those things. It's more about how do they improve their profit margins? How do they grow and scale their business without having to add additional cost and personnel? How do they retain their best talent, right? How do they keep people around for longer than that 24 months? And so those are the problems that we're focused on solving for and that our platform can solve for. Because when we work with large agencies, part of that process, what it looks like is we do a full audit of all their operations and their entire process, all the way from strategy through to planning, to implementation, activation, and then through to reporting and actualizations at the end of the campaign. And we will map that entire process out. And what we find is that there is just such disorganization that's happening across the agency that it's simple things that you might not think are a big deal, but tracking down all the insertion orders from a specific campaign and all the different versions of those insertion orders, all the reports for that campaign, all the different proposals that were tied to it, all the communications tied to that campaign, which are sitting in different Excel spreadsheets or people's inboxes. It makes it incredibly hard to run, an effective organization. So a lot of what we're focused on is around bringing together all of those things into one central place so an agency can run a more organized, more efficient, more effective business. And, we believe that will help them increase profit, help them grow, retain their employees because people are going to be less frustrated in their day-to-day, and they'll ultimately be able to service their clients better. So those are the things that we're focused on solving for with our software. We have a DSP as part of our platform, but it's really just a small part of what our platform can do for an agency is that programmatic buying.
When you think about, I guess, people working in the industry, and like some of us have been doing this, you've obviously been there for 14 years now. What is it that you like about, I guess, advertising technology or advertising in general? And what keeps you sticking around for so long? Because you could easily shift into, fintech, or you could shift into crypto, because I've seen a lot of people kind of leave ad tech, move into those markets or those products, and then kind of come back and do a full circle. But what keeps you hanging on to this industry?
It's probably the same thing that frustrates a lot of people about this industry. I actually like the rapid change, and it keeps me on my toes. I feel if you're working in this industry, it's very hard to get complacent. If you become complacent, you're no longer really going to be effective. So you don't really have a choice to become complacent. And I like that about it. We do have a shiny object syndrome, in ad tech. And so I think kind of shifting through and sorting through all the noise to find out what's real and what's not, that can be frustrating. But again, it's also challenging and rewarding because you're constantly forced to learn and grow and to educate yourself around what's going on. So I think that's honestly a big part of what I love about this industry is how quickly it changes and that it forces me to stay on my toes.
If you didn't work in ad tech, what do you think you'd be doing if you weren't engulfed in this, digital buying and selling? And
I think my ultimate dream I've got probably is twofold. One is that before, when I was actually interviewing with Centro initially, some of the other organizations I was looking at were non-for-profits. And I think ultimately my dream would be to be able to go and consult with and help nonprofits, especially startup nonprofits that are just getting off the ground on, how to build a framework to operate their organization. Not just the marketing piece. I love the marketing piece, but I also am pretty operational. And I think I'd love to be able to kind of give back what I've learned over the last 2 decades at this company and in this industry to, non-for-profits that are trying to figure it out. So that would definitely be one area that I'd love to give my time to. The other is I have a huge passion for gardening, for landscape design. I would love to do that just as a hobby, just find the time to do it. I do it for myself at our house, but I'd love to do it for other people too.
So Katie, I mentioned in the intro that you do a lot you work with the Allen Robinson within Reach Foundation. You currently are active with the Wesley Child Care and Patrick Williams Foundations. What's that about? And how do you find time in your day? And why are you so dedicated and passionate about doing that?
So I think it's a couple things. One is, specifically with these two organizations, they are Chicago based. And so I really do like feeling like if I'm giving my time, my energy towards a cause, I like it to be something that's tied back to our community and the community that I'm in. So that's one of the reasons why those two organizations I'm specifically excited about. But, finding the time it's challenging. I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. I've got my roll-up basis. I'm married, so I've got a husband, I've got a dog. Trying to figure out how to make time for those other things has been challenging. I do think that, I work remotely, which the flexibility that I've been able to create in my life has afforded me the opportunity to be able to do some of these things, which I'm incredibly thankful for. I'm no longer spending almost 3 hours of my day commuting to and from work. So that creates a little bit of time and space. And also these organizations, they understand that everyone who works with them is busy, has jobs, has lives. And so a lot of the time is actually, board meetings at 8:00 at night, events over a weekend. And I'm more than happy to spend my time outside of work doing those things if I feel like it's meaningful and it's giving back to our community in some way.
Yeah, it's hard with kids. I have kids myself, and finding free time is nearly impossible.
Yeah.
Like nearly impossible, unless it's after they go to bed and then it's late and I'm tired and I don't really feel like doing anything. So great job being able to kind of manage that with 2 small kids.
It is a challenge, especially when your 4-year-old doesn't like to go to bed until 10:00 at night.
Yeah, that makes it tough. That makes it tough. It's it's summer for us already. So my kids are out of school and they've been staying up extra late.
Right.
And I'm like, what happened to downtime? Like where I could there is no downtime. It's like go 24 hours a day. So I disappear every morning. I'm like, hey, I got to take off and go to work. So Katie, do you believe in heaven and an afterlife? This was actually a question that I've had and asked every guest, I think, for the last maybe 10 episodes. And you're the one who picked it. So
Okay.
I'd love to hear if you do believe in heaven and an afterlife.
I do. I would say overall, I'm a hopeful person. I like to think of myself that way. And I absolutely believe that, we're here on earth for a very short period of time. And if there's nothing after this, to me, that is somewhat of a limiting and depressing thought. So I like the idea that we're all part of something much larger than what we can see in front of us. And an afterlife, whatever that may look like, whether it's reincarnation or heaven, I don't know, but I think there's something on the other side.
I agree. I think that's a lot of why I've been focusing a lot on people on this podcast. I think the technology is great and I think the industry is great and we have our good and we have our bad kind of aspects, but I think there is something after this and I think it's good to give back in any way that you possibly can, whether it's your time, whether it's your money, whether it's just like acts of kindness. I think it's super important for your soul.
You've got to nurture your soul and your body, right? And your mind.
Yeah. I mean, you just sleep better knowing that you're just better to people. I mean, I've never understood people that do the opposite. It's a good way to live.
I agree.
Awesome. Well, Katie, that actually brings us to the end of this episode of the podcast. I want to thank you and thank Basis.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you, Hollis. I really appreciate you. And I know you're here listening, but thank you for bringing Katie to the podcast. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the AdTechGod Pod, a podcast for the people about the people that make AdTech great. Stay connected with me for more insights, trends, and interviews in the realm of AdTech. Don't miss out on our latest updates, so follow me on X, Instagram, and connect with me on LinkedIn. Don't forget, ATG Slack community has insights, networking opportunities, and jobs. Keep the conversation going and stay at the forefront of AdTech innovation.